isn't it?
Yeah, it's gone back to the original owner. So we took care of that this past Friday. So thanks to the ones that got the help, and I'm sure there'll be more here coming in here in just a few moments. But while they're making their way, does anybody have a special spoken prayer request? That maybe something happened to you or your family since the last time we met, you may not know about it. So does anybody here? That's their request.
Pray for God. Lord, that you will
Okay. Well, we miss her this morning. Brother, we miss her. That feels strange coming this way without her. I know usually when you come this way, you're coming from work and you used to be by yourself. And why? Yeah. And she learned a little extra word this morning. She was planning on it, but she's learning. Let's also remember Marlene this morning. She's going through some physical difficulties. You want That's good.
Both diabetic.
Right.
Both of them are in bed.
Right.
And for this,
Uh-huh.
the house, he does with mine.
Right.
He's our own home first. And he's going to be going down and like that before we're there. He's been to a further. On my farm, close to that. I don't have anything wrong right now.
Yeah, even if a person's healthy and is exposed to mold and mildew all the time, you're not going to be healthy much longer. But if you're already in a healthy state of diabetes and whatnot, it puts that much more toll on you. So mold and mildew is not a good thing. Not a good thing. Right. Just also remember our pastor today. He got off work this morning. We were all still asleep, most of us. He was just getting off. So when we got up, he was just getting ready to go to bed. So I don't look for him to show up at 11 o'clock. She's shaking her head no. But I know yesterday he had a hard time sleeping, so instead of having to walk, we'll get a double blessing today from Brother Walt. Hear what God has to say through his voice and his lips. So we're anxious to hear him both today and now. So, we'll go ahead and go to the Lord in prayer. Our Heavenly Father God, thank you once again for allowing us to be here in your house that you set aside. Before we were even born, you set aside this place for us to live, and thank you for that. God, I pray you just be with our pastor today. Touch his body, give him the rest that he so desires to need. And I pray you just bless him and his family as he's away from us today. God, we thank you for sending Brother Walt our way this morning. God, I pray you just give him the words that we need to hear. And we will give you all the credit and glory and honor. That way you're able to preach through him. That's what we need to hear. And I pray for the ones that are sick today, that are home sick in body. God, I pray you just touch them and heal them and bring them back to us the next opportunity to get our will. God, I pray for the ones that are facing surgeries. God, I pray you just be with the physicians, show them that you are the great physician. All things are possible through you. And we thank you for everything you've done for us with this church, everything you're going to do, and you are doing. We thank you in advance for everything you want to send our way. Go with us and guide us. Bless us as we go through the lesson here. In thy precious holy name we pray. Amen. We'll go ahead and this is, I guess, part 2 of our continuation of last week. and I'm not sure if we'll get through with it again this week or not. But if not, he'll be to be continued. So we started last week. We kept we got into a subject about what is a tithe. That was a question we covered last week, and we went through a lot of the Old Testament. Matter of fact, all the verses we covered last week dealt by the Old Testament on how they did on their tithe, and we've seen that last week. And nowadays, when we think of tithe, we think of passing offering plate, put your tithe in, and anything extra that you give will be considered like a love offering. And we've seen where the tithe comes from, and we've seen how they back then gave their tithe. It wasn't necessarily by money. It was by other things that wanted God bless them, considering food, and they brought in extra portions of their food they raised, and they created a big storehouse, and it was said that once they were doing that, it was noticed that they had more than they needed, so they was able to contribute to out their area of people that don't have it. And I think that was good. So we'll go on. And we seen last week the term tithe is found in Scripture, Mazor or Hazor in the Hebrew, and also in the Greek is described as pikot, translating to the tenth. Thus, the notion that one should give 10% of one's monies to the church comes from the meaning of these words. Scripture tells us that God does not want us to do whatever we want to or what seems fit. Obviously, we've seen that didn't work then and it does not work now. So, he laid out principles for the running of the new country, Israel, that would provide care for the priests and those in charge. We, of course, do not live in theocracy today, unless you live in Iran. That's theocracy, I'm sorry. The tithe may have been for a different purpose in the Old Testament than for the church today. But we do not get key principles from these passages that translate into how best to provide for the church today and how we can exercise good biblical stewardship. I know last week I hit on which if you've ever gone, and I'm sure everybody here has done this, you've gone to a sit-down place to eat. I know you've got these fast food places where you go order your food, get it, leave it on a tray, sit down and eat, and then you throw your stuff away. And then you've got these sit-down places where they sit you, and then they will come and somebody will take your order and then bring your drinks, your refills on your drinks, and then bring your food, and you think, well, they did a good job. They didn't let me run out of tea or Coke or Diet Coke or water. They did a good job. And you never met this person before. Chances are you've never met them. If you've gone out of town, you've never met the person. They did a good job. You met the person. Well, they'll bring your bill to you, and they'll say, well, we'll collect this whenever you're ready. In other words, not a rush, but just hurry, because we got to get other people sitting down. But you think, well, they did a good job, so, and it's broken down in like 15, 18, 20% of your bill they get. In other words, a tip. And you never met this person before, and say, man, they did a good job for me today. I'm going to give them 20%. They did an excellent job. But then Christians today fuss and argue that the preacher comes in and say, on tithe and only asking 10%. What's wrong? The picture's all backwards. We should give the waiter, the waitress, the 10%. They've never done that for us. They didn't save us. They didn't heal us. They didn't help our problems. And the God of all gods, the creator of this universe, we ought to give him more. Because he's the one that saved us. He's the one that healed our bodies. He's the one that provided for us. I think a lot of people got this backwards for some reason. So, the giving a tithe, as history tells us, a common practice among most, if not all, ancient Near East cultures such as Babylon, Persia, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Syria, and even as far east as China. For them, it was called a royal tax and service to their gods. For the Jews, it was a sacramental tax. And then it gives scriptures in a different book. For Abraham was well acquainted with it when he was migrated from Ur, in Genesis 14:17 through 20. So he gave honor and tribute to Melchizedek, who was a priest of the Most High, and a mystery to us, as we do not know the details of whom he was. But almost certain that Abraham's tithes would also have been recognized as a holy deed. And that's found in Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 4. So let's turn over there this morning. Hebrews chapter 7, see what that says. Hebrews chapter 7 and verse 4. All talking about Melchizedek. It says in verse 4, now consider how great this man was, unto whom even the patriarch Abraham gave the tenth of the spoils. And no doubt he gave a tenth of his money. It's talking about spoils. Probably his what he raised from the ground. His corn, his wheat, also probably of his flock also. As we've seen back then, they gave 10% of their animals, and they were blessed. And the giving of the tenth of our goods to the church, what we call today tithing, is a seemingly good concept, or is it not? First, we need to point out that nowhere in the New Testament does it advocate tithing. And the Old Testament has only 2 narrative passages on it, along with scores of other texts that most people take out of their context. Hence, why there is so much misunderstanding on this topic. Have you ever known somebody maybe accidentally take something out of content? It happens. We are never to build doctrine just on narrative stories, because stories are illustrations and historians of the journeys of our ancestors, such as Abraham and Melchizedek. They do not necessarily represent the character or doctrine we are to follow. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they do not. If a guy comes up to you and says he is Melchizedek, will you empty out 10% of your savings and hand it over? Or, such as this case with David and his affair, because David sinned. Does that mean it is okay for us to have an affair? It is in the Bible, you know, to have an affair. But the story, history of that incident is about David's actions, good and both bad. So be careful how you interpret Scripture. Always do it in its context. In this case of tithing, we have to look at the timeline of events too. Hence, a lot of people proclaim crazy and unbiblical doctrines by arguing their viewpoint from passages out of their time context or from Solomon. However, as we already saw, the Bible is so clear as it admonishes us to be stewards, especially in the handling of our money. And it gives us a blueprint for action. And that is found, if you'd like to turn over to 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 7. And we covered that about stewardship earlier. So we'll go over this verse here. 1 Corinthians